You have been invited to a party. It's a really grand party. The finest food, the very best wine, professional musicians and dancers. There are servers who will take your coats and pour your wine. The conversation will be absolutely riveting. The jokes will be hilarious. You get to dress up, wear your hair high, check your nails, and put on your very best outfit. At this party, you get to be pretty and witty and bright. You get to shine, to be your very best self. And that's the catch. You have to be your very best self. You have to be on, which is okay, right? Because you are pretty and witty and bright, fascinating and humorous. So you're going to be just fine until you're not. And then sadly, you won't get invited because this party is for the best of the best. You could put a lot of work into getting yourself back on form and try and get an invite next time, or you go to another party. This party is not so grand. No opulent surroundings, no professional catering. The food is going to be like basic. And you're going to have to do your own clearing up after you. And another thing, you're not going to get to sit next to the most handsome or the most entertaining of guests. You're probably going to have to sit next to someone with chronic depression or a communicable disease, someone whose dress sense and table manners are really not up to scratch. But here at least you can be yourself. Not just your shiny, very best, made all the effort self, lockdown self, you know, with body hair and pajama bottoms. The self that is prone to anxiety, that has aches and pains and moans and whinges, that says the wrong thing and puts their foot in it, that does the wrong thing. You get to choose. If you choose the first party, you're going to have to work for it. And if you don't get in, you're still going to be welcome at the second party. However, if you choose the second, that's it. You're never going to make it to the first party. You're not going to be on the guest list. The party, the feast, the banquet, in biblical terms, is always a symbol for the good life, the ideal life, the life of the community, the people we want to be. And the feast that the prophet invites us to is not based on how hard you've tried, how successful or wealthy or well-connected you are. For that feast, you don't need money. You don't need to have worked for your place at the table. There is milk and wine and rich food without price, without payment. In the gospel, Jesus holds such a feast. And the food is not quite as rich as the prophet Isaiah said it might be, to be honest, because it's like a couple of stale loaves and some sardines, but there you go. And the company, we know, leaves a lot to be desired, because it is the people who were so desperate that they followed Jesus up into the wilderness, the ones who are sick and maimed, the ones who are excluded, the mad ones, the bad ones, the sad ones. They're hopeless and feckless and outcast. And they are following Jesus and making up this party because they want him to cure them. And he doesn't cure them perhaps in the way they'd expect it. He doesn't make them pretty and witty, strong and beautiful, successful and powerful enough to get them on the guest list for the first party. Instead, he teaches them how to throw a party just as they are. Now, these parties, the lectionary being what it is, we always get things in chunks, and in the actual factual gospel, the party that Jesus feeds, the feeding of the 5,000, happens in response to the party that Herod holds, following which John the Baptist is beheaded. It is the beheading of John the Baptist that causes Jesus to leave and the crowds to then follow him. Now, Herod's party, the shadow of which is cast over the feeding of the 5,000, was the best party. It was the place to be. Anyone who was anyone was at that party. And only the very best was served there. Which was, of course, because anything that was not the very best was kept out. The good stuff was for the select few. And when John the Baptist intimates that not everyone there might be their very best, and in fact the man throwing the party had a few marital problems that were causing a few eyebrows to raise, then he was silenced permanently. So the alternative party that Jesus throws, it's not thrown as a consolation prize for those who are never going to make it into Herod's party. It's not thrown to provide a kind of charitable provision for the excluded and the rejected. It is thrown as a direct response to Herod's way of living and being. It's thrown to offer a radically different way of being community and a different way of living. Now, we've grown up with political and economic and social and cultural systems which present the world as a place of scarcity and human beings as by nature needing to compete and strive for those scarce resources to try and secure dominance and security in the face of that scarcity. And we have to fight over our place and position in the world because the assumption is there is not enough to go round. And yet, in the feast of the 5,000, we don't see any scarcity. We only see abundance. Even the scraps and the leftovers fill 12 baskets. The coronavirus pandemic, it feels for me a little bit like John the Baptist pointing out, revealing there is something about the party, there's something about the way we're living that might not be the best. That the way we have been partying comes at a cost which may be too high. And we were sharing in the 9 o'clock this morning about those community WhatsApp groups. I'm sure you have all had experience of being part of a community WhatsApp group and feeling the both joy and irritation of this great upsurge of communal well-being and concern at the beginning of the coronavirus. However, in my case, and I am suspecting, and certainly from the nods at the 9 o'clock, it was affirmed that it's not sustainable. There are not people still offering you their excess bread and milk and check in if everyone's all right. There are people WhatsApping you to say, I've lost my keys, have you found them? Or who's taken my parking place? As life for some returns to normal, we seem to have stopped thinking about those whose life has not returned to normal, or about those who were never part of normal in the first place. So the question for us today, the challenge of this reading and of the pandemic is, can we envisage, work towards, commit towards, sustain a different and new way of being community, a way that doesn't hanker always after the biggest and the best, a way that is able to cherish and treasure and value the scraps and the leftovers, gathering them with care so that nothing and no one is lost, that everything and everyone is valued and given purpose. If we can do that, we will not need a miracle to multiply the loaves. we will be able to see that the loaves have already been multiplied. If we would stop, if we would just stop competing for some illusory, always better loaf, for some other better life, we would see there is enough already, and that there is plenty for absolutely everyone to feast on.